we have a little bit of news that's coming out as we're getting ready to release this show, Jim.
Should we just talk nonstop and news will break constantly and we never end the program and people can just tune in to the live stream until we die?
My plan is for us to back ourselves into a daily morning show that'll go for 4 hours a day. But breaking news.
Yeah, I'll back up on you on that one, but go ahead.
Breaking news. Well, I don't even know if we can call it news, but this is going around right now. With all the talk about CM Punk returning to AEW and a potential Chicago date and everything else, and a potential Saturday show, AEW Collision, word has now come out that apparently CM Punk being included in the new Saturday show was a major part of the picture for Warner Brothers Discovery.
Oh.
They wanted CM Punk, and Dave Meltzer did some math on his own. And again,
wait a minute. Have they left him alone again? He's supposed to have somebody with him. That last accident.
Well, he wrote this.
Holy mackerel!
He wrote this in the Observer.
Well, I'll have you know they had to use Bon Ami on the bathroom floor last time they left him alone. But go ahead.
He wrote this about the new show, this new Saturday show. If AEW only makes what Discovery has been paying for first-run shows as a general rule, which is $500,000 per hour in general, is what they're paying for first-run programming. That's $52 million per year, and that's a game-changing financial deal for AEW.
Jesus Christ, $52 million a year to give them a program with CM Punk on it.
The $52 million man, CM Punk.
Well, now, wait a minute. Hold on here a second. Now, it seems like that now that that little piece of information is being bandied around in the public, well, I think that besides the fact that CM Punk has had a long vacation and that vacation should come to an end for the good of AEW's business, for the good of Punk's business, should he... I think that torn pec ought to start bothering him a little bit unless he gets his contract renegotiated. Because they're going to give Tony Khan's AEW $52 million a year for a show contingent on CM Punk being on it. And after all the public mudslinging and the fact that Punk, his name has been dragged through the mud after he was physically assaulted and his space invaded by the childish and petulant EVPs, shouldn't that be worth 15% finder's fee on that $52 million? Who's handling his business these days?
Years ago, I think it was Mickey Mantle, although I've seen the quote attributed to different people. But I believe Mickey Mantle was asked, once the era of free agency started, once players in baseball started making all that money, they said, what would it be like for you if at your peak, when you played for the New York Yankees, you had to negotiate your contract with George Steinbrenner, considering the kind of years you had and how much money they're paying people today and the value of players. And he said, I'd walk in there and I'd shake his hand. I'd say, hello, partner. You got to know your value sometimes, even if it pisses people off.
Okay, and so coming back down to earth, and I mean, that might be a thing that Punk's thinking about at this point, but coming back down to earth, that makes a little bit more sense now. With the reports that they were trying to or wanting to or thinking about splitting the roster and putting Punk on, one show or whatever, the other guys. I mean, they still, the EVPs want to be away from him because they're cowardly little sots and they're all scared of him. But now it comes out that they have not only been sabotaging Tony Khan's efforts to bring back a big star in the wrestling business that may or may not, depending on your viewpoint, have brought significantly larger television viewing numbers to their program or sold a few more pay-per-views or a few more live event tickets or whatever. Now we find out that they have been trying to sabotage the efforts to bring back the one guy that the network stipulates they want to be involved in a new program. So is that not more? I mean, I know that the little buckaroos, little Maddie and Nikki, are right-wing zealots, but are they taking a class in insurrectionism here? Now we find out that what they've been doing with every time that we talked about it, just on the last program we did, every time that they get wind, and I'm sure they get wind even before we get wind, that there's conversations between Tony and Punk or intent to bring him back or some opening of communications. Then all of a sudden something gets leaked from their side, or Blandon Cutlet tweets something or agrees with something that inflames the talks and sets them back because they don't want him back. But apparently not only do 300,000 or 400,000 of the television viewers want him back, but now the network wants him back for a program that they could gross, that company could gross $50 million in a year on. If I was Tony Khan, I would be telling Kenny and Maddie and Nikki to grab their knee pads and fucking do some squats, because they're going to be on their knees in front of Punk for a long time, whether they need to beg or plead or blow or whatever they need to do to get that man to agree to come back and do whatever the fuck the network wants him to do for $50 million. And if they don't like it, they can hit the fucking bricks. How far is this going to go?
And by the way, he could still sue for the executives led by the Bucks and Omega and Mega, from the number 2 in the company and the executive vice president storming into the dressing room. There's still plenty that can be done over that, so they just keep playing games, it seems like.
Is anybody at the network actually following this shit show to understand that the people that work directly under Tony have been the ones trying to run the guy that they want on the program out of the company? Is anybody even paying attention over there?
Listen, when AEW started, there were several people that Tony Khan wanted working for him. You know that as well as I do. CM Punk.
I'm not allowed to say.
I carefully crafted my phrase there, but CM Punk was one of those guys. And CM Punk, for whatever reason, said, no, I want to sit back and see how this plays out. So whatever investment mentally the Bucks and Omega and Cody and whoever made in the early days, Punk didn't see it that way. He saw it as something to sit back and let's see how this plays out. Let's monitor the situation. Eventually he comes back, and all of these guys that were big deals in their own little world, all of a sudden they're not selling the most merch. All of a sudden their segments aren't getting over the way they used to. Never forget that Young Bucks segment where the fans started chanting FTR. That was game over for FTR, that segment right there. But CM Punk came in there, did all these things, as Tony Khan himself has said, boosted the business, and kept to himself. He didn't go hang out in their locker room or dressing room, whatever you want to call it. Kept to himself. Now, some guys would go and spend time with him. But this is what happens when you don't go and play the game that everyone else is playing backstage. And if a Saturday show, again, it's not as good as Wednesday nights, as you've said several times, but if a Saturday show means a fresh start for some of that crew, where they're not going to have to put up with the backstage games and the drama and the children, then that's a good thing.
Who's going to book it?
That's the problem. The problem, and again, and I've even heard some people be complimentary of the new Ring of Honor under Tony. Now, we haven't seen it, but I've heard some people say, how come Dynamite's not as good as that? Which is funny that people would be saying that. But if Tony...
Well, here's the thing. He has... I'll let you finish your thought in a second, but with Ring of Honor, even if it's more complimentary, it's just because he probably has fewer people in Ring of Honor that he will listen to, and at least it's something coming from basically one person instead of a bunch of people that he listens to in AEW doing their own shit, which doesn't fucking match with any of the other shit. Go ahead.
So even if Tony's doing a good job at Ring of Honor, which we haven't seen, and we see what Dynamite is, and that's not a good job in any way, but a lot of guys who are strong-willed, or at least will play the game, get their ideas on that show, maybe with some touches of Tony Khan that he thinks, because he thinks he's a booking genius, that he sprinkles on their ideas. If the Saturday show is still that, but it's CM Punk in charge of CM Punk segments, if it's maybe FTR not being used like goofs, who knows? CM Punk, though, the one thing to say about his run in AEW, it's a track record now. 1 year, great segments, great matches, real emotion, fans invested in things. Serious segments in the world of professional wrestling. That's exactly what I think wrestling should be right now. So I'm optimistic for CM Punk because he's proven it for 1 year that no matter what damage Tony Khan does to the rest of that program, his segments, he's not going to allow the shenanigans.
It just, that's the problem, is that if you have a program with shenanigans except in one great segment, I think you should have a program with great segments and no shenanigans. And that's not going to happen with Tony Khan if he's getting a brand new 2-hour program. If he wants to put a talent roster on that program with CM Punk in charge, how about then giving, or the top star giving CM Punk the right to pick 2 or 3 people that he might think or believe in that company that he could entrust with putting together a proper television format and letting it be independent of the other program. And then you've got a fair way to see, which one is more successful. If it's Wednesday night, here is the Wednesday night shit, and Saturday night's the same looking shit as Wednesday night, just with a few different people, but it's still booked by Tony except for the CM Punk segment, which will be good, then it needs to be its own program. If it's going to have different talent, it needs to have a different look and a different outlook and different presentation.
Different commentators.
And different announcers, yes.
That's a big deal.
Because, and Sockface will do everything he can to tank anything that is opposed to the Buckaroos' outlook on wrestling, because the only reason he owns a television now, much less is on television, is because of Maddie and Nikki, his childhood friends.
I started Pro Wrestling Guerrilla.
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah, but just because your breath smells like cheetahs ain't no sign you're Tarzan, pal. So you can't have an announcer that's going to try to, or wouldn't even understand how, if he was trying to do a good job, he wouldn't understand how to do a wrestling program. He only understands how to do VHS commentary in the basement. So there's a lot of things that need to be worked out for that $50 million.